Okay, there. So hi, welcome to the new subscribers to the Academy. I will spend a little time by way of introduction, but talking about some reminders before I get to the questions. So the first thing I want to say is that Module 2 Zoom call will take place on Friday, November 5th at 11. If the second thing I want to talk about is if you feel strongly that you would be more likely to attend the live Zoom calls if they took place at a different time, please let me know via emailing me directly what is your preferred time so that you could attend live. I am trying to get more people to attend the live Zoom calls. I know that some of you are not attending because the time is not right, or because you haven't been able to listen to the modules, the session or the lesson, or for whatever reason. I know that some of you are watching the videos, the recordings of this call. So if you don't have time to listen to the session or the lesson in each module, you can still attend the monthly calls because you will always hear something that will help you become better at doing this difficult work. This is, as you know, a relatively new program, and I'm always thinking about improving your access to me. I'd like for you to take advantage so I can share my experience and offer my guidance so you can continue to grow in your confidence and effectiveness with couples who now need us more than ever. And I want the calls to be valuable to you. So I'm thinking that, for example, in addition to changing the time, if that's what would make it more easy for you to attend live, I'm thinking about asking you to send questions about anything, not just about the module. So for example, today I will be responding to a question sent by one subscriber: why do couples break up? Let's see, what else do I want to tell you? I want to remind everyone to read or reread the stages of development as a couples therapist and the stages of the couple therapy treatment. You can find that in the resources tab. This way you will be able to self-assess your confidence level and your effectiveness as a couples therapist with these two documents, because it will give you the outcomes to strive for. Of course, as I always say, if you're camera shy, you can always turn the video off. And if you have to choose between listening to the lesson or to the session, I would vote for the session. And I think that's about it. So I want to answer two questions today. Why do couples break up? And the second question I want to answer are something that came in too in an email, some ideas regarding the clinical position of a couples therapist. And I take that to mean something that's different from an individual therapist. So I will go ahead and ask Todd or Michael if you have any other questions for me to answer after I talk about the topics that I just discussed, that I just mentioned.
Yeah, I was just sort of thinking of, in terms of like during the session that you put on, that there was, it sounded like the female other couple had almost like a tone of sometimes disrespect in a way, the way she talked. And so I have a couple now who's very disrespectful to each other. We've talked about setting up ground rules and how to have conflicts, and they still talk in a way that's really sort of putting the other person down consistently. And just any sort of feedback on how you sort of manage that or deal with that when you keep talking about it and it keeps happening.
Great question. Thank you. This is actually a little bit related to one of the things I want to say, I want to talk about, which I'm going to start in a minute. Michael, yeah, go ahead.
Just the other thing is, like, one of the couples I work with, there is probably like alcohol involved in part of it, and the other one there isn't. So it's kind of in both, just to put that out there. Like, it's one where there's probably a lot of drinking involved, and the other one where it's just there is no alcohol use. So just information.
Yeah. Okay. What about you, Michael? Anything?
Sure. Good morning. I think for me, I appreciate the audio of the couple, and I'm really struggling with the couple right now where the male heterosexual couple, male partner is having some difficulty feeling some of the influence from the feedback he gets from his partner. So it's sort of, I get a lot of, I don't know, pushback is the right word, of saying, you know, I'm not going to change who I am. I don't want to have to filter everything that I say to my partner. I need her to be less sensitive. So I go through, how can he build a little bit of empathy of what her experience is? But then I just kind of get stuck with him in particular, and I'm not sure how to kind of shift in my work with him, because I don't want to, I don't want to change him if he doesn't want to be open to change. So I'm just kind of stuck with this dynamic, and it sounds similar to what Todd's describing. So I just wanted to kind of add that to that. So thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, this is another great question. Both of the questions are great, and we can try to talk about alternatives. This is a very common thing to say, I'm not going to change who I am. Very, very common. A lot of people say that. So let's talk about some ways that we can deal with that. So let me get to first the two questions I got. I keep wanting to minimize. Okay. So let me just talk for a little bit. So one of the questions was, why do couples break up? And I want to give you 3 reasons. One is they haven't learned how to deal with their differences. 2 is they stop paying attention to the relationship. And 3 is they feel they cannot influence their partner, which is part of what you're saying. So let me go back to the first reason. They haven't learned how to deal with their differences. So in the honeymoon period of the relationship, differences tend to be shuffled to the background because people have this illusion of sameness. And this is the time when the attraction is strongest and the relationship has time to form and the bond gets established. But inevitably, as we know, the first stage of the relationship doesn't last. And after the honeymoon period, the real relationship sets in. And in a real relationship, we get disappointed. We don't always get our needs met. We don't always like everything about our partners. And we don't always agree on important things. When the real relationship sets in, many couples exhibit the following. They have escalating conflicts, or they avoid conflicts, which prevent them from having an effective problem-solving strategy to deal with their differences and disagreements. And this is when they start blaming each other for their problems, and they feel like they made the wrong choice of mate and may think about breaking up. Usually this means the couples have not found a way to diffuse conflict, solve problems, stop a conversation that's not going well, and resume it for it to go a little bit better, accept their differences to continue to be kind and generous like they were when they first met. I'm going to stop and see if you have any comments or questions about what I just said before I move on to the second and the third reason why couples break up. Should I keep going? So the second reason couples break up is that they stop paying attention to the relationship. Many relationship experts keep saying that a relationship needs work, but more than work, a relationship needs attention. When couples stop paying attention to the relationship, this results in disconnection, they grow apart, they no longer feel connected, and they don't do things together. They prioritize work or children over the relationship, and that leads to more disconnection, lack of touch, lack of sex, lack of affection, lack of spending time together and hanging out. So as normal stresses of a life together pile up and crowd out the time for romance and intimacy, couples may put less effort into the relationship, or they let grievances they hold against each other tear them apart. Research shows that when couples do nothing to keep the connection going, the relationship deteriorates even when they're not negative interactions. Most couples in my practice are profoundly disconnected, and as clinicians, we need to make decisions about whether to work on the conflicts or their disconnection first. Often, the conflicts are the result of disconnection and not the other way around. Any comments or questions about that, or should I keep going to the third reason why couples break up?
Can you just repeat the last statement you just said about the research shows and conflict or disconnection?
Right. Research shows, and I can send this via email afterwards, because I'm not sharing my screen, which I could have done. But research shows that when couples do nothing to keep the connection going, the relationship deteriorates even when there are not negative interactions. So it's not just it's not the negative interactions that are the problem, it's the absence of hanging out and keeping the connection going, or having sex, or touching, or showing that that each of them matters, depending what framework you're using. So what I say is that, I said most couples in my practice, I would have to think about whether it's most or many, are profoundly disconnected. And as clinicians, one of the things we need to make decisions about is whether to work on their conflicts or their disconnection first. And often the conflicts are the result of the disconnection and not the other way around. Should I move on to the third? Okay, so the third reason why couples break up is that they feel they cannot influence their partner. When one partner feels like that they accommodate to change more than the other, they may feel like they can't influence. This is one of Gottman's main ideas, that and there are gender differences in this. So many times men have a harder time allowing their female partners to influence them than the other way around. So as the relationship evolves over time, couples need to adjust to change circumstances, change roles, change life experiences. If one member of the couple does most of the changing or adjustment, the resentment may set in. And so that's something that you can explain to people. Of course, couples also break up if there's a history of substance abuse or an untreated mental health condition. But in my experience, the three reasons above are the most common reasons why couples break up. They feel disconnected, they don't know how to deal with their differences effectively, and one member feels like they're doing most of the relationship work and the other one feels criticized or put down. I will talk more about strategies to deal with this lack of influence, which I know you're wanting to hear. But let me talk about another thing that I think is connected to your questions. And this is the ideas regarding the clinical position of a couples therapist. So I want to say a few things about that. The first thing I want to say is that everybody says the client is the relationship, and that's true, but it doesn't tell the whole story. The client is the individual in the relationship. And there are at least 3 clients in the room. A lot of couples therapy is individual therapy in the presence of the partner. Or individually, before you can put them together. The second thing I want to say is that it's important to pay attention to 3 realms: the realm of esteem, self-esteem that is, the realm of differentiation, and the realm of attachment. I don't think clients are ready to solve their problems when they first come in, and this may help you answer some of your questions, because they need to learn how to talk about them differently without activating shame or undermining their partner's self-esteem. I also don't think they can solve their problems if they're too enmeshed or symbiotic and not differentiated enough. And the attachment issues, of course, play out also. The most important is the one that Susan Johnson calls the, quote, "Are you there for me?" unquote question. Knowing which of these three realms to address first is the art of the couples therapist. So if you're feeling like there is disrespect in the session, that's a self-esteem realm, and that needs to be addressed first. Let me move on. I'll say how, or we'll talk about how if I can figure it out. I'll give you some examples. So the other thing I want to say is I believe strongly as a couples counselor, this is my clinical position, and this is how I work. I believe strongly that it is a responsibility of each partner not to undermine their partner's self-esteem. Partners have a responsibility to convey messages that activate pride, not shame. And it is my job to help couples become, if not responsible for the well-being of their partners, which I think they are, at least to help them understand that they have the power to influence their partner's self-esteem. And many couples will report that. And then the last thing I want to say is that, and this I explained to couples, relationships are psychologically regressive in that they resemble parent-child relationships, which makes it harder to be sexual. We enter into an implicit unconscious caretaking contract with our mates, which works for a while until it stops working. As Esther Perel says, it's hard to feel sexual with a partner that acts as your mother or your father or your sibling. Another comment I want to make about this is that sometimes we act like children disguised as adults, and we utilize the adult version of tantrums when we blow up, shut down, withdraw, attack. This gives us a form of a strange instant gratification, but it damages the relationship. And the third thing I want to say, and last thing I want to say, is that adult intimate relationships are also psychologically regressive in that many individuals feel like their partners ought to know what they want and don't think they play a role in obtaining what they want. And I call it a regressive position because this is what happens to infants and children, not to adults. In other words, an infant gets a parent to say, "Oh, what's going on? Why is she crying? Why is he fussing? Why is this?" So there is a guessing that goes on in terms of guessing the needs of children that successful or effective parents do, and that gets trained. In infants and children, the parents are there for them. They're trying to figure out what's wrong. They're trying to figure out how to help them meet their needs. If it worked well, then they grow up expecting that. And if it didn't go well, they grow up expecting that. So whether it goes well or not, they always expect that their partners will be able to guess what they want, whether there is a big T trauma, a little T trauma, or no trauma at all. A relationship is a psychologically regressive position because we feel like partners ought to know without us doing any work. Partners ought to know what we want without us asking for it. Okay, so I know I said a lot, but these two questions really, this is some of the stuff I talk about in meetings and presentations. But I thought it was a good time for me to address this now, especially because there's members who just joined, and this is, or members are going through the first module again, and this is a good time to review some of these fundamental positions as we engage in this difficult work. So do you have any comments or questions about what I said? And like I said, I'm going to send that to everyone so you can see it in writing. Should we go on to, so now, okay, let me ask you this, Todd. Now that you heard me say what I just said, is there something that you can think of doing when you are the witness to the disrespect? So we are the witnesses of the disrespect, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we are the only witnesses of the disrespect because couples are very isolated nowadays. Unless, like the couple of the audio, they spill it out into their neighborhood and the neighbors have to call the police. But we are the only witnesses. And do you have any thoughts? And I don't mean to put you on the spot. If the answer is no, just say no and I'll keep going.
No, it's not very well thought out, but all of it makes a lot of sense. And the part that I connected with is that the responsibility of each other for each other's self-esteem, like the responsibility for their well-being. And so a lot of sort of and I try to point it out, and maybe I could do it in a better way. There's a lot of the disrespect is about classism, is about how financial differences, it is about, and it really does wear the other person down. And I've worked with the one person to sort of speak that up a little bit himself, like to bring it up, how it makes him feel, and then also directly kind of challenge it or confront it. And it doesn't seem to matter. Like it just, because we've seen each other for quite some, several weeks of this, and it just, I'm trying to think of another way to break into it, because it doesn't seem to work what I'm doing. And so I'm not sure if so I don't have any good ideas of what I could do differently,
Okay.
but I think that's actually playing out a lot of
Yeah.
that.
So the every couple is different, and so you're aware that what you're doing is not working. So let's find out what is working. A lot of couples therapy is about trying something that doesn't work and then trying something else to see if it works better.
Yes.
So I do a lot of psychoeducation in the beginning of a treatment, a lot.
Yeah.
What makes relationships succeed or fail? What predicts divorce?
Yes.
And sometimes I do that psychoeducation. I'm going to say a couple more things I do. Talk about the brain, how the brain reacts, lower brain, higher brain kind of stuff. I talk about how to talk about things. I tell them you're not going to be able to solve the problems until you talk about them differently. Anyway, and sometimes a year goes by and I'm back to doing the same kind of psychoeducation that I did a year ago. So, because couples revisit, re-traumatize each other, so there's that don't give up, because you often have to go
Yes.
back and do the same kind of psychoeducation.
Yes.
The other thing I want to say is that one of the ways that I deal with it when my pointing it out doesn't work, or when when I ask them to self-assess and it doesn't work, or they don't change. Well, I go for the opposite. I try to elicit pride. And I ask them to tell me what they are proud about in terms of their own personality, in terms of how they operate in the world. Now, mind you, some men are not going to be able to do that because they think it's, well, some women too, but some people are going to find this self-serving. They can't talk about themselves in a positive way. But I really help people access their own, and sometimes I have to do this individually because in the presence of the partner, it's hard, but so then I do that. So what are you proud of? And then I ask, what are you not so proud of? So that people can tell me themselves what it is that they are ambivalent about. What a big reason for the work, a big way of working is to help each individual in the couple tap into their own ambivalence. This is what I like about myself. This is what I don't like about myself. Rather than, okay, so that I just thought I would give you that as a tool to try to access pride.
Yes.
And very often, the way a partner mistreats another partner is a reflection of how they mistreat themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so I need to figure out a way of getting to that.
Mm-hmm.
I have a case that, so this is a heterosexual couple. The female member of the couple was extremely disrespectful, a little bit like in this audio, extremely disrespectful, sarcastic, the works, right? Lowering self-esteem. And rather than talking about what she ought to do or not do, I said, okay, talk to me about yourself. So how do you feel about your role as a mother? Awful. How do you feel about your role as your profession? Awful. And how do you feel about your role as a wife? Awful. And she started crying and she said, I never thought about it that way, but I feel like I'm failing in everything I'm doing. I feel like I'm no good. I feel like this is really hard. And I said, so you feel awful. And I connected the feeling of awfulness.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, when we feel awful, we often want to blame somebody for how we feel. And so I help people connect that they feel awful about themselves and that feeling of awfulness is often projected onto their partner. I don't use the word projection because it's something that they may or may not know about, but that they put it on their partner. You're in such a bad mood about yourself, and they will understand that.
Yes.
And she said, yeah, you're right. I do that.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, would you like to, so then I said, this is not easy, working full time, having 3 children, and being in a relationship and having a house and owning a mortgage. I mean, it's an impossible job, and you're feeling like you're not good. So would you like to hire me to help you figure out how to get better? This is what I mean by individual therapy in the presence of the partner.
Yes.
So this is a lot of individual work about how they feel and connecting that how they feel and how awful they feel. There's a reason why they feel that way, and also that they tend to blame their partners because of how they feel.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's helpful, but that's been very helpful in this case to think about it this way.
No, it's very helpful, and like going back to the psychoeducation again is also helpful because part of it is they came in high conflict. So I sort of skimmed over some of that, trying to do some stuff, and so going back there. The other part, which is, and it's helpful to sort of thinking through, the one person who is often disrespectful won't see me individually, has a really hard time even being the center of what we're talking about during this. So it's trying to find a way in kind of where that can, what you're saying rings true a lot. Like there is that, getting to that part, and I'll have to find ways to get to that with him since it's so, I don't know if defensive is the word, but yeah.
But let me give you one other tool. So in couples therapy, both members are not equally motivated to change. Usually there's one that's more motivated to change than the other, like Michael's question indicated. And the one who blames and the one who's disrespectful is actually less motivated because his or her level of hope that his partner will change is low.
Yeah.
Did that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense.
So he's more disrespectful.
Yeah.
But his level of hope that if it's a heterosexual couple that she will change is low.
Yes.
So this is what I do when I assess that.
Mm-hmm.
I say to her, something like this. He's hurting you with the way that he's talking to you or treating you or whatever. But you hurt him too, but in different ways. And I actually say this to both of them. I say this, if you believe you both are hurting, you both are lonely, you both are disconnected, if that's true. But the reasons why you're disconnected from her are different from the reasons why you, female partner, are disconnected from him. So they each hurt each other, but in different ways. If you believe, this is another part of my psychoeducation, if you believe that the way you hurt your partner is less severe than the way your partner hurt you, you're not going to be able to have a good relationship. So I say that part of the process of getting better is for each of you to acknowledge the ways in which you hurt your partner. And I mean, we could talk later or not about how I do this, but how do you heal from all hurts? How do you do an impact statement? How do you do an apology? I mean, all of that stuff we can use as couples therapists. But the first order of business is to help them acknowledge that the way they hurt their partner is different than the way the partner hurt them. And so I start with a more motivated partner and try to elicit information from the more motivated partner. So in what ways have you hurt your partner? Well, she might say, in this case, I drink too much, or she might say, I don't give him enough affection, or she might say, I don't want to have sex, and I think he's an idiot for wanting to have sex. I mean, she wouldn't say it like that, but that might be the implication. Or she might say, whatever. So that acknowledgement alone would go a long way to make him feel, oh, maybe there's hope here, that she will acknowledge, that she will understand, that she will try to figure out how to do this a little bit differently. And then that may soften him up. So leave him alone if you can't get there.
Yeah, okay. That makes sense.
Now, the feminist in me will say, here we are again, wanting women to make more changes than men. And so we do need to take care of that too. But let's talk about the motivation first. And women are indeed often more motivated. That's true.
Mm-hmm.
So let's use that as a strength. Okay. So let's move on to Michael's question, which was, I'm not going to change who I am. Did any of what I said about before help with that issue?
Yes, definitely. I think I took a lot away from what you just shared with Todd, and I can apply it. Yeah, I'm still trying to kind of process parts of what you're saying, so I'm trying to formulate how I'm going to approach this couple with this. So thank you. I appreciate that.
So if you want me to say more as you're processing about any particular issue I said, let me know, and I'll try to expand on it. But I also want to give you some answers to your specific question. I'm not going to change who I am. And I think we need to have a repertoire of answers for that. That is not an easy thing to come up with. So let's think them through. I'm trying to see if I can come up with some ideas of what I say to people who tell me this. And it's very common, very, very common. So one thing that going back to psychoeducation, one thing I say is that I'm going to talk about a couple of things. One is that the relationship is a separate entity, and that there's you, partner one, partner two, and there's a relationship. And the relationship is a living being, living entity. And for the relationship to thrive and get better, every behavior that we do, everything we do impacts the well-being of the relationship. So that's one thing I say. So what you do impacts the well-being of the relationship. So you don't have to change who you are, you have to change what you do. So that's one message I use. And I mean, I can give you an example of a couple I saw this morning, actually. And so this is, again, a heterosexual middle-aged couple with 2 little children. So they're having a conversation about, she says, well, when he tells me this bottle needs to be discarded, and he leaves it in the sink and doesn't wash it himself, then I have to wash it at 10 o'clock at night because I don't want to see it in the sink the next morning, because he takes his time and does it whenever he wants to. Okay. So I walked him through, and then he started saying, so after she said that, then he started saying, you know, there's always a subtext after she says this, that I don't do enough, and that's not how I feel. I do a lot. I didn't grow up. I grew up in a household where men did a lot of household chores, so I don't shy away from doing stuff. I do a lot of stuff. But he says, we grow up in different ways. I'm not gonna hire 10 people to do all the stuff that I think we should be doing ourselves. So this is part of their contentious thing, that she thinks she ought to hire people to help, and he doesn't, because he grew up in a family that they did everything themselves. So in the beginning, I tried to challenge that, because he grew up in a family with 8 children. It was an immigrant family. They didn't have enough money. They have enough food and a roof over their heads, but they didn't have enough money. So initially, I got into lower brain when he was talking about that. And I asked a question that he did not like. And I said, are the two of you making more money than your parents did, or are you making the same or less? So that was a completely inappropriate question. So, I mean, I know where I was trying to go, but it didn't work. So I wanted to challenge him, but that was not the right way of doing it. And so I very quickly switched, and I said, I walked them through a dialogue. Instead of me doing it, I asked her to become a listener to what he was saying. And I gave him the dialogue tool, the initiator, the listener. And I said, if I would draw the question, I literally said that. And I said, how about you, female partner? What are you understanding from what he's saying? Can you recap? This was the first time I was walking them through the dialogue. And so at the end of that, she understood. She said she got it. I said, that there's no problem solving yet, just, so they each took turns being the initiator. They each took turns being the listener. When they were done doing that, I said, now problem solve. How could you solve this problem? And she said, oh, we could take turns saying whose turn it is on the day of the week to do the dishes all day, which I thought was a great idea. And then he said, oh, well, I could have the dishes done by a certain time at night. I said, that's another great idea. I said, so what is this? So then I did the psychoeducation. Then I said, okay, it was when each of you were able to express what's happening to you, what matters to you, what is of concern to you, and being listened to and acknowledged in your concern, that you can problem solve. So the reason I'm saying this in response to the question about I don't want to change who I am is because I ended up saying to him, you don't have to change who you are, but you can't ignore who she is either. So being in a successful relationship is figuring out how to keep both ideas in your head at the same time. This is what the people talking about mentalizing are doing. So I want to talk about myself, how I grew up in an immigrant family, but I also need to take into account that she might be wanting to hire more people. I don't want to hire more people, but she might want to hire more people. So how do you negotiate? How do you collaborate? How do you compromise? And you just did it beautifully. You beautifully figured out a way. Once you felt heard and understood and acknowledged in your uniqueness, in your personality, in your wishes, in your concerns, then you can come up with a beautiful solution to your problem. So that's an example of what I do when people tell me, I don't want to change who I am. I say, no, you don't have to change who you are. You're right, unless you want to. So I tell them that you don't have to unless you want to, but you also can't. But what's behind that is he doesn't want to change who he is, but he wants her to change her, right? So there's the subtext there is that he wants her to change, and neither one can change the other. They can only change themselves if they want to. Any questions, reactions to what I'm saying now? Oops, I keep doing that.
No, I appreciate the example illustrates how it might work in session. I've tried multiple things with this couple, so I'm going to keep trying, as you said, just keep going from a different angle. I did try to talk to him about, would you talk to your boss this way? Would you, how would you collaborate and compromise with them? And that's where it kind of really flew into, well, I don't want to change the way I have to do that already outside of the home, but I don't want to have to filter myself coming into the home.
Oh, that's another one that is so common. That is so common. Then if somebody tells me this directly, I have said, right, so they don't want, this is what's happening nowadays. People are so spent in their outside world that they bring the crumbs and the pieces of what's left of them to the home. They have no energy. So I totally get it. So you got to empathize with that really a lot, right? So, there's so much stress out there. There's so much, whatever it is that he's dealing with, that he brings the rest of him, what's left of him, which is the crumbs, and he doesn't want to make any effort. So again, that's another part of psychoeducation related to why couples break up, that they don't, if you don't pay attention to the ways in which you treat her because you're so spent, you're not going to have a good relationship. Your relationship is not going to survive. Again, I don't tell them you're going to get divorced. I don't tell them you need to, I don't say that, but I'm realistic about what it takes and about what contemporary couples distress is about. And a big piece of the contemporary couples distress is that we put all our energy into our work and we bring home what's left. And that makes it so that we don't pay enough attention, we are not careful enough, we don't treat our partners the way we treat our neighbors, we don't filter everything that you're saying. So I don't know if you want to have an individual session with him, or if you could do it in front of her, if it's a heterosexual couple, if it's a same-sex couple, if you want to do it in front of him, or anyway, I don't know. But I do think that that is a big piece. And does he have an idea of what he can do about that? Because I think what he's saying when he tells you that is that he doesn't, the home is a castle, the home is a refuge, the home is a I actually had a similar dialogue with a client a long time ago, and I acknowledged all that. The home is a castle, the home is a refuge. You want the home to be free of conflict, to be, because you're fighting and a war out there. You're being, you're so exhausted when you come home and all that. And so that was helpful to him when he heard that, and it was helpful to her. This is, again, 99% of the couples I work with are heterosexual. It was helpful to her to hear him say, my home is a refuge. I want my home to be a place where not a place where I have to fight. And so the emphasis then shifted from him not wanting to change to her hearing, postponing, waiting for the weekend, collaborating and negotiating on when to have these difficult conversations, so that, maybe other times I've worked with couples who say to me, I need to decompress before I can be present. I need a half hour of TV. So a lot of guys will say that. I need it, but often when I come, she just, tells me about all the things that are wrong and all the things that need to be done, and I can't do that. I can't function. I can't. And then that's when I jump and I become frustrated. So a lot of it is about trying to figure out what he wants, what he needs, and for the other partner to hear it, so that they can be more clear about what they need. And often they are not very clear, and part of the therapy is to help him become a little more clear. Once he gets off the fence of blaming her, he can become more clear about what he wants, what he needs, what kind of respite he's looking for. I need a half hour, I need 20 minutes of TV, I need a whatever it is. I need a walk, I need to take the dog for a walk, I need to go in my cave. Who knows what he'll say.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I think I'll just say one last thing. What you reminded me of, the castle, of like this refuge. He started the session out by saying, I had asked him, what are we working on today? And then he looked at her, and then she said, well, you told me I can't bring up anything that's going to cause conflict. And so it was like, now he's starting to do that in our session. And so we talked a little bit about that. So I just, how this could be a safe space for us to explore these things, but he's also then viewing the therapy hour to be his refuge as well. So thank you.
Right. So that's, yeah, that what you're saying is making me think of this wish that people have that the therapy hour will be a refuge. And avoiding discomfort is not possible. If what you want is to be comfortable, this is not a good place. So I struggle with this because, you know, in my readings of frameworks and authors who talk about how to do couples therapy, you know, people talk about you have to create a safe space, you have to create a context for change, you have to make it easy, you have to make it comfortable. And I struggle with that because, yes, you have to make it easy, you have to make it comfortable, you have to make it safe, and not. Because this is not going to be comfortable. You're going to be hearing things that are not going to make you happy. And so how do we balance safety and discomfort? And that might be a good way of thinking about the therapy session, the balancing of safety and discomfort. But this is not going to be a comfortable process. In fact, I believe the only way people change is when they get feedback from their partners. That's, you know, nobody change. So that's another thing I say to the I don't want to change. I say, of course you don't. Nobody wants to change. Nobody wants to change who they are. The only reason we change is because our partner makes us. I'm going to say a little more about this. So this is actually a very old Salvador Minuchin quote. The only reason people change is because somebody else makes them. So sometimes I give a personal example. So, okay, yeah, I'm going to give you a personal example. So, you know, my profession is, as a therapist, is to ask questions. This is who I am. This is me. So my husband comes home, this is, you know, decades ago from work, and I start shooting questions. How did your day go? What happened with this and that? And did you talk to so-and-so? And because that's normal. That's who I am. That's what I do. And one day he said, you need to stop asking me questions. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't want to talk about work. When I come home, I want to be in a refuge in a castle. I don't want to remember what I taught, what happened. Anyway, so you could attribute that to male all you want, but I'm just trying to give you an example of the only reason I changed and don't ask him questions unless they're welcome is because he told me so. I wouldn't have done that on my own. And I'd like for you all to remember that people change in relationships based on the feedback that the parents, the partner gives them. And if you don't change at your own peril. So this is the part about how do you, right? So the second part of your question, Michael, I think was, how do you get people to allow themselves to be influenced by their partner? So this is one thing you can say to them, right? That, and I give lots of examples to this. I give this personal example. I give another example, which is also personal, which is about my children. So I am the mother of 3 adult children right now. Actually 5, because I have stepchildren too. But I am the mother of 3 adult children, and 2 of them are twin girls, and they are 38 right now. And so I sometimes either asking too many questions, speaking about who I am, Or I am, let's say, I haven't done that now in years because of their feedback, but let's say, 10 years ago, when they were in their late 20s, one of them told me, you got to stop doing that, Mom. Whatever it was I was doing, whether I can't remember anymore, whether asking questions, interfering, telling them what to do, acting like a parent. And what did I do with that information? So relationships that work well are the ones where you can take the feedback of your children, your partner, and do something with it. And so I think that we need to understand, each partner needs to understand the complaints of the other. What are the main complaints your partner has about you? Well, that I do this too much, or not enough of that, and what are you doing with that information? What do you do with that information? What do you think you can do with that information? What do you want to do with that information? What do you not want to do with that information? You ignore that information at your own peril. She can't ignore your wishes and it's mutual and reciprocal. But let's begin to figure out what is each of the complaints of the other and what you do with that information. So when he says, and 80% of complaints are started by women, 80% of divorces are initiated by women. If men don't figure out a way of saying, what do you want? So this is, again, this is very gender-based and very general. But usually it's men, according to Gottman, who have more trouble being influenced by women. And if it's a same-sex couple, then both of them have trouble influencing each other. I forgot, I lost my train of thought about what was I saying right before saying the Gottman thing, that they have trouble being influenced. Oh, I know where I was going. So I said, many of the divorces initiated by women is because men don't allow this influence and tweaking their response or their behavior based on the women's complaints. Most of the divorces happen because of that. Well, again, I say most, I mean many. I'm exaggerating, but many divorces happen because men don't allow themselves to be influenced by the feedback of their partner. Granted, the partner doesn't know how to give the feedback, doesn't know how to edit the feedback, doesn't know when to bring up things, all of that stuff. And if you teach her, let's say, how to do that, and he still doesn't allow the influence, then the relationship is not going to make it.
Thank you so much. That helps a great deal. Thank you.
Thank you for saying that. And thank you for coming to the meeting. I hate to, okay, hold on. Do you have any other comments about the lesson or the session? Do we want to talk some more about, do you have any questions about what, I don't know if you had a chance to listen to the session or the lesson. Do you have any questions about how I handled what I did in the session? This was the first session with a high conflict couple. Is there something else that you want to talk about regarding that, if you had time to listen? And, given that there's just a couple of you. I wouldn't be surprised. And so I don't want to stretch the meeting for another 30 minutes if there are no questions or comments. And I know that I'm scheduled and committed to 90 minutes, but if there's no more people, we need to stop it. So do you want to stop it now, or do you want to say anything else, or?
No, I think just like same thing Michael said. I don't have any additional questions, but it's been very helpful to sort of think through how to approach the couple I'm saying. Just even language and kind of psychoeducation and just sort of pulling back from problem solving and sort of helping them understand some things more. So it's just been very helpful.
That's great. Okay, so is it okay to stop now?
Mhm.
Okay. See you next month.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so
Bye.
much.
You're
Alrighty.
welcome. Bye.
Bye-bye.